The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
Cousins has his arm hit. Ball is out. Hit by John Franklin Myers. Rams say they have it. Right now, it's ruled a fumble.
I think it is a fumble, Joe, and now it's a matter of who's on it.
Rams have
it. Good morning to those of you waking up after a late Vikings game. It's a special edition of the Zone Coverage Football Machine. Don't panic. Don't panic. No one has been replaced. Andy Carlson, Arif Hasan, Luke Inman, Yinka Ayende, they're all still here. But my name is Sam Ekstrom, and this is a special appendage to the Zone Coverage Football Machine programming. Game reactions from yours truly after each game for the rest of the season. I cover the Vikings for ZoneCoverage.com. I'm in the locker room, travel to about half the games, go to the home games. Was not in LA last night, but will still manage a strong effort for this morning's show. Maybe you listened to me on Locked On Vikings for 2 years with Sage Rosenfels. That run came to an end in late July to focus more on zone coverage-related things, and this was one of them. Minnesota Vikings post-game analysis. And I'm happy to be part of the Zone Coverage Football Machine platform. It's a big platform. You guys have been loyal fans, and I know I've always enjoyed being on the show as a guest, so thank you for humoring me as a host. I can't promise the same type of wit or the same type of memes that Andy can provide or the Luke, Arif, Yinka contingent, but enough self-deprecation, I guess. We'll get to the meat of this show. Vikings, Rams, a 38-31 loss. Huge thanks to everyone who came out to Lucky's 13 Pub in Burnsville last night. We're doing that weekly. Luke Inman hosts pre-game, halftime, post-game analysis. So many giveaways, so much swag from Zone Coverage and from Fangirl Apparel, who we're partnering with. Just a fantastic time. Thank you to everyone who came out. It was a blast. I'll be there for about a quarter of the games this year. Luke, my man, will be there for all of them. The humble producer, Tom Schreier, he'll be there at most of them. It was an awesome time, great atmosphere, and we got to take in the game from Lucky's in Burnsville. If you like offense, you really can't ask for much more from that game. It was one of those that resembled one of those sort of minor PGA Tour events where the course is really easy, and if you're not birdieing every hole, you're going to fall behind, and the final score is like minus 23 on Sunday for the winner. It was that kind of game where if you settled for 3 instead of 7, if you punted, if you turned it over, heaven forbid, which the Vikings did on the final possession, no surprise, that cost them the game. The Vikings settled for 3 field goals. They turned it over once, and I think that was a huge difference in this game. Now, before we get into some of the minutia of Vikings-Rams, let's talk about the big picture. Big picture, right? The Vikings are 1-2-1. The Rams are 4-0. And I said this at Lucky's last night. You may have to start parting with the dream of a number 1 seed, home field advantage throughout the playoffs, because the Vikings now are, in essence, 2.5 games behind the Rams, minus a tiebreaker. Not that the Rams are going to have a tie, which would result in a tie situation, but the Rams have the huge head start on the Vikings now to the point where you almost have to start adjusting your mind, adjusting your expectations for the postseason. Minnesota's best bet might be to win the division. It doesn't feel like there's going to be a 12-win team out of this division right now. It just doesn't. And maybe you have to settle for winning the division and being a 4 seed, maybe a 3 seed best case scenario, but the Rams are now 4-0. And I know that teams can start fast and end terribly because it's happened to the Vikings twice in the last 15 years. So I'm not locking it in yet, but just playing the odds here, 1-2-1 start. It's not going to be great from a conference standpoint. Now, from a division standpoint, I'm not pressing any panic buttons yet because you've got 2 Bears games left. And do you really trust the Bears as the front runners of this division? I don't yet. You've got 2 Lions games left. and you've got the Packers at home to win the tiebreaker and the season series over them. So the NFC North, still wide open. I think, and Mike Zimmer said this last night after the game. He said, I'm not concerned about the record. We only have 2 losses. I'm concerned about the defense. We got to get this fixed. And he said, and this is the quote going around most, that in no place I've ever been has the pass defense been this poor. And that's saying something. Frankly, the Vikings looked Leslie Frazier-like last night. I'll say it. I'll go that far. It looked like the 2013 Vikings pass defense. 38 points allowed, 465 through the air. And let's see, what was Goff per throw? 26 completions, 465 yards. Bust out the old calculator. 17.9 yards per completion. That's an egregious lapse in coverage on so many levels. I was wary of this coming in. I wrote it. I said it. I was very sure that Los Angeles was going to come in and absolutely give the Vikings their best shot. If you watched them against the Chargers, they really were not stopped unless they shot themselves in the foot. The Chargers did not stop them. I mean, Goff made a bad pass for an interception. Gurley fumbled. They had a penalty that hijacked a huge play, but they really never got stopped in that game. So the fact that the Vikings were in this thing late and they actually got a stop when they needed to and got the ball back with a chance to tie, I thought that was all you could ask for at the end there. But, and then fumbleitis plagues Kirk Cousins again, strip sack, very anticlimactic ending, which I think robbed us of a thrilling finish, and it would have been very Green Bay-like in the sense that you give Cousins the 2-minute drill. Can he come down and deliver the game-tying score? It didn't happen. Strip sack, recovery, game over, Vikings lose. Shades of Arizona in 2015 when Dwight Freeney spun around Matt Khalil and got Teddy Bridgewater to clinch that game for the Cardinals. Thursday night game, NFC West team. Plenty of parallels. Before we continue, just a reminder, make sure to subscribe at zonecoverage.com. Just $2.99 a month is all it is. That's like half a coffee. Great content, podcasts, articles, team guides, Wolves starting up, Wild starting up, Gophers hoops I'm getting excited for, and of course, plenty of Vikings content, zonecoverage.com. Thank you in advance.
How long Zim's going to put up with some of these mistakes by Mackenzie Alexander.
Cooks might have gotten away with a false start there. They didn't throw the flag. Now in the end zone. Cobb! Come on! Touchdown Rams! What a catch! What a throw!
So the Rams last night had drives of 2 plays, 4 plays, and 5 plays, all resulting in touchdowns. 4 of their 5 touchdowns, 5 or less plays on the drive. Jared Goff, touchdown passes of 70 yards, 19 yards, 47 yards, and 31 yards. Wow. The defense that never gives up big plays, yeah, let's revisit that one. The Vikings were, I think, far and away the best team last year net in terms of the differential in big plays. Subtracting the big plays made from the big plays allowed, and the Vikings were the best in the NFL. They've had plenty of offensive big plays, don't get me wrong, but defensively speaking, far too many lapses, and so often the linebackers have been exposed, not exclusively the linebackers, but in many cases on the biggest plays it has been. And let's be real here. This is not the Vikings saying, yeah, we think Anthony Barr can cover Robert Woods. We think Anthony Barr can cover Cooper Kupp. It's either a schematic advantage on the opposing team when they line up, as they did in the Robert Woods touchdown last night. They caught the Vikings with Ben Gideon on the field for only the second time all game. Gideon played 2 snaps. They knew the Vikings didn't have enough DBs. The DBs they did have were inexperienced last night. Barr was the obvious choice to put there in the slot, and Woods burned him. Safeties didn't do much to help out last night, but can't really speculate too much on that before seeing the All-22. It's hard to know what averted their gaze on a couple of those plays, but they weren't in a spot to help. And I know on the Cup touchdown, Mike Zimmer insinuated that they didn't help Barr on the backside, were the words he used. Barr got caught on a wheel route, which continues to plague the Vikings, those wheel routes. So Barr's on the wrong end of 3 touchdowns, and it looks bad for Barr. Couple of them are just flat out Barr being in bad spots, not on his own accord. Being asked to do something that's very hard to do. Now, I'm also quite concerned about the secondary. Even though Barr's the scapegoat, the secondary in general, let's think about who were the top 3 cornerbacks last year. Terrence Newman in the slot, okay, he retired. Xavier Rhodes has had to leave multiple games this year. He's been rehabbing often prior to practice, trying to get his, I think it's hamstrings right. He's not 100%, and it seems like he rarely is. Trey Waynes has now had to depart 3 out of 4 games after covering a deep route. Trey Waynes' greatest asset is speed. It's closing and recovering. And 3 times he has injured, I believe, his ankle. I think it's a recurring ankle injury, having to cover those deep routes. So he's not 100%. The cornerback who played the most last night was Mike Hughes, and he's a rookie. And he's a promising rookie, but he's a rookie. Holton Hill was on the field a bunch. Mackenzie Alexander was as well. It was Alexander, Hughes, and Hill arguably playing the most last night out of your cornerbacks, and often at key times. Xavier Rhodes gets himself basically yanked from the game by kicking a penalty flag, and then they pick on Waynes the next play. Waynes gives up the touchdown and gets hurt. Just a huge turning point in that game. That was when it was 21-17. The Rams scored to go up 11, their largest lead of the game right before halftime. Rhodes not on the field because, A, he gets a defensive holding call, number 1, to merit the flag, and then he kicks the flag. And there have been times this season when, from the press box, you get the binoculars out, you look down, Mike Zimmer and Xavier Rhodes are arguing. And Zimmer has not been shy to criticize his cornerbacks. He wears his emotions on his sleeve during the game. He's yelled at Alexander. He's yelled at Rhodes during the game, and it's been caught on camera, or maybe we've seen it from the press box. But there's a certain level of frustration seeping in. You know, there's nothing more exhilarating than when you're climbing up the mountain and you're reaching the precipice and you're the number 1 defense in your league. And I think the fall can be just as jarring. You know, you've established yourself as something. You've got a label. You are the best. And then to lose that, it can make people come unhinged. So the defensive concerns are totally merited. Not only do you have a secondary that is lacking, that is nowhere near the dominant self it was last year, but you've got linebackers getting exposed and teams figuring out how to expose them. And you've got a defensive line that doesn't have its captain, Everson Griffin. And unfortunately for Stephen Weatherly, I think after a decent debut that Mike Zimmer liked, didn't show up much last night. Neither did Tayshaun Bauer. Daniil Hunter got the lone sack, but it's really going to be on Hunter to pick up where Everson left off. It benefited Hunter to have Everson typically occupying a lot of attention. Now Hunter's that guy, and Hunter's got to come through. He did have 1 sack, the only sack of the night on Jared Goff. The Rams had the best pass blocking unit in the NFL per Pro Football Focus, and it showed. Andrew Whitworth, guy the Vikings didn't want to sign. He was too old, he was too expensive, and maybe he was too expensive, but he goes to LA and he's the backbone of that line. John Sullivan, he's hurt, he's old, he's expensive, he's their center. So I get the financial implications of those moves. The Vikings needed to make some decisions, and who says that Whitworth even wanted to come to Minnesota anyway, or would have come to Minnesota? But I think there's a certain level of ruefulness when you look at what the Rams have on their offensive line. And they're in the sweet spot right now. Young quarterback, cheaper contract, spending on defensive stars. They're healthy in the trenches too. Offensive line healthy, defensive line healthy and ferocious. And the Vikings did well, I think, to at least keep them away from the quarterback most of the game. And a lot of that's on Cousins for being decisive with the football. They gave up plenty of pressures, but they didn't get home until late. But 3 of the last 5 plays resulted in Cousins sacks when he dropped back. 3 of the last 5. One of them was a third down, 3rd and 6 in the Rams' red zone. Cousins gets sacked. Vikings settle for a field goal. They're down 38-31 instead of 38-35 with a touchdown. The other sack, 1st and 10. Vikings trying to tie the game with a touchdown. Cousins gets sacked. Vikings get off schedule. They did get back on schedule, though, with that Treadwell first down on the 3rd and 9, only to get strip sacked on the next play. Vikings lose. And Zimmer said after the game, Donald kind of took over at the end, and he did. Tom Compton, the guards, tough night. Pat Elflein had a holding call in his starting debut. We'll have to watch the tape on Elflein. But the offensive line, I think, is sort of what we expected. You lose Nick Easton for the year. You've got some guys banged up already. You didn't expect a perfect offensive line. You expected a better defense. And you expected the defense to make up for some of those offensive line woes by keeping the games lower scoring. And that hasn't been the case. And Cousins has now dropped back 105 times in the last 2 games. Let's extend that out. 153 times in the last 3 games because he's been playing from behind in all 3. That's problematic. It's the Zone Coverage Football Machine. Again, I'm Sam Ekstrom. Postgame reactions the rest of the year. I'll be in Philadelphia next week. Some tough memories there for fans, for Vikings players, Vikings coaches. Yours truly got snowed in, wasn't able to get home after that NFC Championship game. Wasn't fun. We'll be back next weekend on behalf of Zone Coverage.
Cousins sacked. Ndamukong Suh.
Okay, so a few game-changing moments that might have flown below the radar. I wrote about this last night, zonecoverage.com, so here's the audio version. Adam Thielen should have had a touchdown in the first play of the second quarter. Great pass by Cousins, that slot fade, right side, Thielen, diving catch. Marcus Peters fans on him, does not touch him down. Thielen knows it. Now that's the key here. If Thielen gets up and sort of waltzes around, gives the ball to the official, well then, okay, moot point. But Thielen knew that he wasn't touched and made a decisive move to the end zone. I don't think LaMarcus Joyner was going to tackle him. I think if that goes unwhistled, I think Thielen scores. Vikings get up 14-7. They did get a field goal on the drive, but that's a 4-point swing. And this is not a ref-blaming show. Try to stay away from that. But when you lose a touchdown because of an errant whistle, that's frustrating. That's probably some part of the reason Thielen was so charged up last night. He lost a touchdown there, and then he got pulled from the game on a 3rd down because of concussion protocol, which is a good system. You can say that with gritted teeth, but in Thielen's case, there was nothing wrong. There was nothing amiss. He only missed 1 play in the whole game, and it was that play, and it was a 3rd down, and the Vikings had to punt because of it. So he had a huge reaction when he eventually scored that 45-yarder for a touchdown, and I think he had a lot of emotion in that game, some frustration. Certainly, he's a competitive guy. He's got over 100 yards in all 4 games. Adam Thielen is a monster. But that's a tough play in the game, and those 4 points would have come in handy. How about later in the second quarter? This is when things really went badly for Minnesota. I wrote about the play with the 2 flags on Rhodes. We've gotten into that. We don't need to rehash it, but minute 41 to go in the second quarter. You're trying to resist a 2-minute drive, or at least hold them to 3, and Rhodes gets 2 flags, same play, off the field, Wayne's in, touchdown, Robert Woods. And by the way, that trio of Cooks, Woods, and Kupp, player for player, it's got to be the best trio in the NFL. If Diggs and Thielen are the best duo, then Cooks has to be the best trio. And those guys can catch the ball. Jared Goff, ridiculous, throwing everything in the right spot, but contested catches in the end zone. Great concentration, great body control. Basically nothing slipping out of their hands. Really, really impressive performance. But then I woke up this morning probably more bothered by the clock management at the end of the first half than anything else. The Vikings have 28 seconds left and 1 timeout. They throw a pass over the middle to Kyle Rudolph. They get down to the 21. So he gets touched down, and I checked on this. 23 seconds left. Okay, so if you're going to throw over the middle, the next play has to be, without question, a spike. And research shows that you can get a spike off in about 8 seconds. So let's say you spike it, you're down to 15 seconds, you have a timeout in the bag, you ensure yourself at least 2 plays. Okay? Option 2, you call the immediate timeout with 23 seconds, and then you leave it in the hands of your play callers and your playmakers. You draw up plays either to the end zone, that will be a touchdown or an incompletion. You draw up plays to the sideline, that will be either incomplete or out of bounds. And you trust that your receivers can make a catch and get out of bounds and save time. Let's say that you want to run a couple short plays from the 21. Okay, quick pass to the sideline, get 10 yards, 6-7 seconds. Then you're at the 10. Then you've got 16 seconds left. That's 2 or 3 shots to the end zone. Who cares if you don't have a timeout? The Vikings tried to run a play. They didn't do either of the things they should have done. They tried to run a play that they didn't even run. They get to the line, 6 seconds left. Now you're in position to not even get the field goal. So Zimmer, I think, at that point smartly calls the timeout, but a complete bungle in terms of clock management. So I mentioned you get 3 because of the Thielen mishap. You get 3 because of the clock management mishap. And then you got 3 later because of that sack that Rashad Hill allowed on the 3rd and 6 late. 3 times, you settle for 3. Needed touchdowns. And finally, a lot of people are going to be talking about the block in the back. Bad call. I'll admit that one. Bad call. And to overturn it, I think even more egregious. Andrew Sendejo blocked in the back by Roger Saffold. But I'm not putting the loss on that play because the Vikings didn't show much evidence that they were going to be stopping the Rams. So if that penalty stands, the Rams will get a 1st and 10, I think, at their own 36. Okay, so the play or the overturn did not wipe out a turnover. It didn't wipe out a 3rd down stop. It just maybe expedited the Rams' drive. And remember, the Rams got a field goal on that drive. It was not a touchdown. So to say that cost the Vikings anything, I think, is a little misleading. The Rams would have had the ball at the 36, and who says they don't call some plays differently and score a touchdown on that drive? I'm a huge believer in the butterfly effect. Massive. I think one play can change a game. I really do. I mean, I'm the type of guy that says if Josh Allen doesn't get hit in the head by Linval Joseph on the first drive, that game plays out differently. That's how strongly I believe that one thing can influence the next and the next and the next. So the bottom line is we don't know. We don't know how that would have affected the game, but I think if you use what happened before and what the Rams were doing offensively, it probably was not that impactful of a play. It's a Zone Coverage Football Machine. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Great to be back on the air with all of you. And I know a lot of you were asking, what's your next move after Locked On Vikings? Well, this is one of them. I'm also doing the Minnesota Line sports betting talk with Mike Gelfand and Colton Molesky. I'm producing that show. And I also launched Bring the Beat In. Huge passion project of mine. Would love for you to check it out. It's in the same vein as Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. I get out of the studio, go get some food, get some coffee with a fellow journalist. We talk about their beat. We talk about the industry as a whole. And there's some cool beats along with it, too. It's a really fun show, I think. I'm biased. Bring the Beat In. Check it out on iTunes or Zone Coverage. We'll have John Krasinski of The Athletic on an upcoming episode. So once again, this is not a replacement for the Zone Coverage Football Machine. That'll still be every Wednesday night. Andy Carlson, Luke Inman, Arif Hasan, Yinka Allende be part of the group as well. Tom Schreier, the producer. The whole gang has gone nowhere. This is an add-on to your already great ZC Football Machine programming. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Follow my work at Sam Ekstrom. Follow the company. Follow Zone Coverage at Zone Coverage MN. And subscribe to this show on iTunes. Thank you so much for listening to this post-game reaction. And hey, enjoy the football on Sunday. Stress-free. No Vikings football. Have a good weekend.